All right, everyone, welcome to our breakout session today, prioritizing coach-youth relationships. We're going to get started here with a little video.
The coaches that have been throughout my life have all had an impact on me.
My coaches, when I was younger, they always showed me respect, and I felt I could almost talk to them more because I felt respected.
I really wanted to give back to students, just like my coaches gave back to me.
I saw how the coaches were so interactive. They brought several perspectives about life. I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, this is something I want to do and want to continue doing.
I got involved about 10 years ago. I just want to get back into golf. Then I met the kids. 10 years later, I am here and I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
I can't look at him. Oh no, it's already going. Hi.
Another coach, huh? Okay, I see how that is. That's really nice for you guys. Joke's on you, Kel.
Obviously the tears show how awesome Coach John is.
Coach John is a true advocate for the First Tee. He makes an effort to keep in touch with the alumni, and he always wants to play golf and catch up with us all the time. Coach John gives his whole world to this organization, and I truly don't believe he gets the recognition he truly deserves.
So I just wanted to say thank you for all that you've done for me. I know you've been such an incredible influence on me, especially with like my ACE project and stuff, giving me so much great advice and challenging me to push the boundaries and step out of my comfort zone, because I know it was really hard for me.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you.
Because of the First Tee, my life has completely changed for the better.
I've always learned to be positive.
I gained confidence.
I feel included.
If I could give my coach a message, it would be thanking them for all the opportunities that they gave me, and honestly, I wouldn't be the same person I was today without them.
So I'd say thank you for just everything they do and for everyone they help. But because of them, I am who I am today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our breakout session on prioritizing the coach-youth relationships. We know that building game changers requires building relationships between coaches and the participant. And today we're going to take a deeper dive into how chapters can really work to assist coaches to develop these important relationship building skills and empower youth on and off the course. As you just heard in our previous main session, we really believe that First Tee is part of the solution to what has been declared the defining public health crisis of our time. As Dr. Gilliland reiterated the importance of our work today, we know, though, that First Tee can only be part of the solution because of our coaches, and we know that our coaches are our real game changers. We know that it's important to have mentors, and we do truly believe that First Tee provides the opportunity to teach these important life skills and strategies that can be applied on and off the course. We say it over and over again, right? That our coaches are the biggest asset to our program. They are our key differentiators. And so I'm really excited to dive into this day today and welcome two coaches and program directors to our panel here. We have Annalise Caldwell from First Tee Clearwater and John Lee from First Tee San Francisco, who will be joining us today. Welcome, Annalise and John. Both Annalise and John serve as program directors at their chapters. They are both level 5 trained coaches who serve as national trainers for First Tee, and I'm really excited for all of us to hear how they're prioritizing the coach-youth relationships. So welcome, Annalise and John.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, for having us.
Yeah, so just to give everyone kind of a layout here, I've got a couple of questions. We're going to talk with both Annalise and John, and then we're going to open up for some Q&A the last 10 minutes here today. So just if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will get to those in the last 10 minutes or so of our session today. One of the things that I want to dive into, right, is we know obviously that we're prioritizing, that we need to prioritize this coach-youth relationship, but how do you prepare coaches for these relationship building skills? And Annalise, I want to go to you first, because you shared a little bit about these coach building workshops that you host. Can you tell us a little bit about those and how you use those to really prepare coaches for relationship building skills?
Yes. So obviously before a session begins, these are very important, coach workshops, but then continuing that workshop theme throughout the session. So I try to host every other month a coach building block workshop where we focus on one coach building block, really dive into that building block and how we utilize it in our programming, how we can expand on it. Both as a good, better, how continuous learning, which is obviously a coach building block, but also focusing really intently on the empowering youth building block. And so I try to build my workshops around a specific building block, and then also asking my coaches to come with a topic that they would like to discuss more in depth, whether that's fixing a golf skill or diving more into the building block itself with a more specific question regarding that building block. But I think just taking the time to dive in, build a lesson plan with the intention of using the building blocks, because they're there, right? Empowering youth. We just heard 2 phenomenal stories on why empowering our youth is so important, and the impact that we're making and those positive relationships.
John, what about you? How do you prepare coaches for these relationship building skills that we know are so crucial?
I think very similar to Annalise in regards to continuing to have trainings and discussions and keeping everyone accountable, almost like how I would say building a goal ladder for yourself as a coach and your staff. Because we can talk about all these things in a session, say it's 90 minutes about a building block, but if we don't continue to follow up on it, as coaches, are we growing as coaches? So one of the biggest things is having, not only are we teaching the participants about a goal ladder, but keeping our staff accountable, building these goal ladders for ourselves. And every 6 to 8 weeks, going back and seeing, are we improving on these things? And I know we get caught up to the day-to-day operations, and sometimes we get very reactive in terms of talking to parents or trying to find the best path for our participants, but it does start with us as the coaches. And that's what I would say. It's just developing a goal ladder for ourselves and keeping ourselves and each other accountable.
I like that idea. Our strategy that we're teaching to our participants that we can actually utilize ourselves here and use for our coaches. One of the things that I think really is important is how do we make empowering youth a priority, but how do you build it into the culture of coaching? And Jonathan, or John, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you do that at your chapter. How do you really infuse that into the culture of your coaching?
One of the things that we always talk about is actively listening. And I know during everyone's coach training, we talk about actively listening. A lot of times, and I'll speak for myself, my mind's moving in 1,000 directions. Did my dogs go for a walk? Do we have enough noodles out there? Is this first aid kit out there? And we sometimes forget that actively listening is the key to building a relationship with both our participants, parents, coaches, to really bring myself and kind of center myself back to the present. Yes, if we don't have enough noodles, is it going to be the end of class? Probably not. If we don't have enough left-handed clubs, we can be reactive when that time comes. So when we're talking to our participants, parents, just continue to be present and make sure that you're truly listening to everything that somebody has to say versus, and again, I'll speak for myself, kind of getting ahead and maybe thinking of those questions and quite possibly when I'm thinking of these questions that I want to ask later, maybe they've already answered and I wasn't even listening. So just be present is, I think, what I would say, and just continue to remember that.
Thank you. Annalise, what about you? How do you build that into your culture?
Very similar to John, actively listening, I think it's building a rapport with our participants, creating that atmosphere that's welcoming, that, they're always welcome. I think very specifically of one of our participants who ended up quitting a sport he had played for a very long time because of the lack of a welcoming atmosphere of coaches that truly cared about him outside of just the sport that he played. And eventually became very involved in our chapter specifically because of the rapport that our staff, our team had given him, and building relationships with him outside of just his golf game. So I think just once again, that comes through actively listening, that comes through focusing on workshops, building a rhythm around your coaches. And yeah, it just proves in the stories that come out of our chapters.
How much would you say that you are both, how much time do you spend modeling kind of these behaviors that you'd like to see your coaches exhibiting on a day-to-day basis? Like how important is that for you in your chapter? Either one can answer.
I'll chime in here. There was so where I am in San Francisco recently, I had a chance, a couple of years ago, I had a chance to speak with a general manager who was a general manager at a private club. Unfortunately, she's passed away now, but almost every day I think about what she had taught me. She didn't really sit down with me and talk about this, or this. What she always did, 100% of the time, she had a very busy job, but if I had 15 minutes with her, I always felt like that 15 minutes was the most important 15 minutes of her day. And I could see, and that's when I spoke about actively listening earlier, and how to translate that over to our staff, something that I don't have quite the skill like she did. But again, I know I keep going back to it, but being present with this. And although she's passed on, I always think about when I'm in conversations with other people, that's the most important 5 minutes or 1 hour of the day, and put precedent on that, and you always will stay present. It's helped me not forget things, and then it does get passed along to everybody else because they see that they're just as important as everyone else. And that's what I would say. Annalise, anything to add?
Yeah, I think you hit it. I think just as program directors specifically, like we wear lots of hats and are pulled several different directions. And I'm a program director at a smaller chapter with, a smaller scale of participants. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to be present at a lot of our programming things and have a face to see and, greeting. But I think just being actively present and aware and involved and seeing your coaches, just watching your coaches thrive and do the things that, we've been working so hard on and instilling. It's encouraging and rewarding.
I love that. And I like that, Jonathan, of just making like priority of like those minutes with them, making them feel like those are the most important minutes of the time, because people often forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel, right? And so that time together, making them feel like it's a priority for you, not kind of a bother or something that, it's taking time away from something else. I think very, very important. What kind of training or strategies do you provide to coaches to assist them with building relationships? And John, you shared a couple of really interesting ones with me earlier, but like, what are some specific strategies that you use to help show coaches how to build relationships?
Yes. So the first thing we always try to do when we have the time, I know it's so busy, but when we have time to meet, and make it a priority to meet with your staff and coaches, because that's where it starts. We don't want coaches to just do what they feel is right at that moment. If we have conversations leading up to it, then their actions will be that of what you want the organization to be represented on. So a lot of times what I will do first is, yes, there's a lot of different things that we want to discuss. But instead of just focusing on, say, 6 to 8 things and just touch on these subjects, really focus on 1 or 2 and take a deep dive. And one of the ones that we have placed an emphasis on this year is the idea of empathy for our participants and our coaches. And one thing we'll do is with the help of Positive Coaching Alliance, and one of the trainers there, him and I have worked pretty closely on talking about presence. Just you, number one, having a presence, not just verbal, but when they walk in, and then the moment they walk in, not to have this idea of who they are when they walk in. And I guess I'm really more speaking on the mental health side to this, and empathy is, yes, if someone's coming in crutches, it's pretty obvious at that moment that something happened to, say, their leg. Maybe there's a cast on their leg, but that might be all we know in terms of health to them. And to really empathize with them and ask them how their days are going, and placing a high emphasis on this, just because we don't always know what's going on. And sometimes, and I'll use an example, I guess the best thing is to really ask these questions, because one day someone came in, they were super jolly, and one of our coaches immediately went over and didn't see them very jolly and just said, what's going on? And they said, I don't want to talk to anyone today. And that was a little alarming. We find out that their parent got sick, very, very sick. Luckily now they've passed by, they've had some medication, and that kid is just the jolly kid, but we don't know those things. So really placing an emphasis on one, maybe two topics on what we're trying to achieve, and really take a deep dive into those topics.
Great. Annalise, what about you? Any specific trainings or strategies that you like to use?
Yeah, one of them is actually in the coach guide. So shout out to the coach guides. I love the character activities that are in those, and specifically the one that dives into in the 14 and older, understanding like where our teenagers are in the point in the world, and like understanding like what's something that I went through as a teenager, what's something that they've gone through as a teenager, and how does that connect us? So very similar to what John was talking about, and just putting ourselves in other people's shoes, and just kind of understanding that we can all possibly be going through something very similar to one another, and being able to advocate for one another. More specifically, it's one of our coaches his parents went through a divorce at the age of 12, and that's a connection he has with a majority of the students in our class, unfortunately, but is able to really become a mentor and help out with those conversations and the frustrations and the sadness and maybe some of the joy involved. There's lots of feelings involved. So I think just we wouldn't have known that except for doing this activity and seeing that and learning that about even one another, and helping each other coach better and empower each other better.
I love that. Yeah. Looking for those connection points, those ways that you can relate and really, understand there. John,
actually, Kristen, sorry to interrupt. I think one thing that we found is to be very successful as well on this topic is one thing I'll say to all our coaches is make the participant the expert in this conversation or in the group. So having your staff be open to learning new things. And we did a coach training or coach discussion a few months ago. And the whole thing, about 90 minutes, was educating each other on a new topic. And me personally, I don't know a lot about lacrosse, but after that session, I knew a little bit more about lacrosse, and really kind of hone in that the expert in this conversation can be the participant. It doesn't always have to be the coach knows everything. And we know as coaches, we don't know everything, but to be able to connect with the participants, they're the expert, helps the coach actively listen, especially if it's a new topic. Maybe it's a cartoon on TV, or maybe it is lacrosse, but understanding that you as a coach can learn just as much from the participants on new topics, and just being open to that.
I like that. John, you had also shared something that I do think is a really great strategy. And it was just during like a trainer meeting, asking a questions to your team. And a question I thought was so powerful was, who is a coach or a teacher or a mentor that you had as a youth, and what characteristics did they have that made them so important and impactful to you? And so allowing your coaches to really think back to who were those people in your life that really were key differentiators for you, and what did you admire about that, and maybe how they can take some of that and make that their own.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody here you have people in your life that you've had they're on your go-to team, or you consider them a mentor. What values do they have? Because something that they did made them who they are to you. How can you become that person? It might not be the same characteristics or qualities, but really identifying what makes you the great coach that you are and continuing that. And that could be understanding, that could be listening, but just really take a look into what people have done for you and how you get pass that along to the next generation.
Wonderful. Well, I want to make sure that we leave some time here for questions. So Lexi, I know you're going to be coming on here. Are there any questions in the chat that you have that you can throw here at the panelists?
Of course there is. We've had a couple specific on the topic of recruiting coaches. So I'd love to hear from Jonathan and Annalise, our favorite network question of how do you recruit new coaches and volunteers to your chapter? We'll start with Annalise because she's smiling the biggest.
Hitting me for smiling. No, it's okay. So I think the common answer is always, word of mouth in your community, visiting golf clubs, golf courses, if you're looking for that route. I know if you kind of want to get away from the golf industry side and you're looking more for like community partnerships, you can go more that boys and girls route, YMCA. I think just the biggest thing is even utilizing your own volunteers to help recruit others. Their involvement, we've been talking a lot about, empowering youth, and the biggest tool of how empowering youth is working is the retention of your participants and them coming back and then bringing their friends. So I think that even shows in your coaching staff and your volunteer team is if they go out and say, hey, this Saturday morning, I was coaching, 2 golf classes and it was so much fun. And, I'm going back next week. What if you came along too? And it's just like builds that kind of that community around it. But yeah, that's kind of the tools I use. I know it's very like typical, but I don't know, Jonathan might have a few more to throw out.
I would say lean on your local the colleges or junior colleges in the community. A lot of times they're looking for part-time work or volunteering. Your alumni network is always good. And then the last one is school teachers. May not be able to work for the whole entire year, but maybe the summers they aren't teaching, and your summer program is very, very large. So I would say those 3 would be where I would start.
Awesome. Great answers. And then we had one other one that I see, but feel free, folks in the room, if you want to put some more in the chat, we are happy to answer. This is more of I think I know the answer already, but for both of you, as you shared that you develop and use workshops to train your coaches, I had a couple asks for those to be shared. If you have any resources, agendas, decks, anything you wouldn't mind passing along to folks, we'd be happy to share it with maybe some of the assets from this meeting. So if you guys are okay and willing to share, we'd love to pass that out. I'm gonna assume like a yes, but tell me if no.
Definitely. And I'll be completely honest, Lexi. A lot of the content that we put on the workshops is tools that have already been created by HQ, and just instead of maybe spending 5 minutes on that slide, we'll spend 45 minutes on that slide. So it's just taking deeper dives into what's already available out there.
Great. And we did not pay him for that plug, but we do appreciate it. Wonderful. Awesome. Yeah, that is both of our questions. I think we answered one other one in the chat about sharing the video that was at the beginning. I do believe all the assets from this meeting are going to be posted and available probably after the next issue of Impact Today. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, with that, I'll pass it back to Kristen.
Thanks.
We snagged a last second edition of mine.
A last second edition. I see it. Thank you, Luke. Not coming on camera, and that's totally okay. I don't think he combed his shiny head today. So the question I see here, how do you deal with coaches who may be competing with each other for a youth attention? if that ever happens in your chapter.
Either one of you want to take that?
Wait, can you repeat that, Lexi?
Sure. Yes. The question is, how do you deal with coaches who may be competing with each other for the youth's attentions? Maybe they're focused more on that, like what they're doing versus what the kids are doing.
That's a difficult. That's difficult. When we talk about, if I'm understanding the question right, it sounds like it's more about the coach at this point than it is about the participants. I think is what I'm trying to gather. So really bring it back to who are we here for? Who or what is the program in our organization here for? Is it for adult to get better at something, or is it for the adults to get better to help the kids get better, and really bring it back to the core mission of what we do? The mission statement doesn't say anything about adults. It's all about youth based. So really just bring it back to the mission and what we're trying to, but that definitely is a tough question. I don't know, Annalise, anything to add to that? I don't know if that helped at all.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to some of even our coaching techniques that we've talked about at trainings themselves, of like, you know, the I and me statements, you know, doing versus telling, those types of things. So like how you're communicating with a junior, and if, I don't know if it's a tension of like two adults fighting over a kid. I don't know. I don't really know where that question's coming from. It seems kind of weird, which would be way off. But I think, yeah, I just think reminding yourself of why you're here, and then possibly just having that could be built into your coach workshop, and hopefully that coach arrives and you're able to touch on some of those things more in depth. But
yeah, my recommendation too would just be from a, you know, a program director standpoint of like really re-emphasizing your culture of coaching and what your expectations are. And again, reminding of the why, turning that focus back around on, it's not about the adults here, it's about the adults getting better so that we can really support the kids. So I think a lot of it starts at the top. Just what are your expectations? Set those expectations, build that into your culture, and hold people accountable, I think, to that.
Great answers, all of you. I think I learned something. Wonderful. Last question. Annalise and Jonathan, for you guys that are taking those deep dives into the building blocks, what happens when you've gone through all four? Do you start over?
yes, they're never ending. I think it's just, we've had a few that have come through and have been through all 4 building blocks, and then have gone to a level 1 and have now gone to a level 2. So I think it's just, once again, you're diving into them more in depth, and you can even age specify them. So specify them by age group. So focus on ages 7 to 9 with empowering youth, because that's going to look a little different than 10 to 11 or 12 to 13 and 14 and older. So you can get super creative. It's not, you know, it's not hard, not rocket science. It's fun. So, and then diving into, you know, lesson plan building as well, using those building blocks specifically.
Great. All right. Well, that is all the time that we have today. We want to thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, John. Thank you, Annalise, for being a part of our panel today. We do have a video that we want to play for you just to thank you all and send you off. But thank you for being with us today. We hope that you have some great takeaways from our time together, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, First Tee, for teaching me golf and life skills. Thank you to my coaches for believing in me, for trusting me all these years. And without First Tee, I wouldn't be who I am. And First Tee really is a second family to me.
I'm thankful for all the advice my coaches have given me on careers and education, and also on the game of golf and networking.
Thank you very much for helping me learn how to thrive under pressure, both on and off the golf course, when school gets hard and when everything gets so hectic. Thank you so much for providing me with a healthy outlet.
Thank you for helping me fall in love with the game of golf.
I'm thankful for my coaches giving me the ability to learn all about myself on and off the golf course.
Thank you for inspiring me and showing me opportunities that I would never have found anywhere else.
thank you guys so much. Thank you for all the opportunities. Thank you for creating like a cool, safe environment. Thank you just for everything that y'all do, especially helping us through high school. And I really, really appreciate you and love you both.
Thank you for giving me all the tools I need to succeed.
Thank